if you think about like PHI and compliance monitoring agents that could be deployed, those are automated because their task is notify you about certain things, right? That's an AI agent that 24/7 works for you, looking and, scanning messaging, scanning code, scanning some things where you would want to find or you would want to be notified.
Welcome to the AI Advantage, where modern leaders decode the future of tech. I'm Solomon Williams, founder of Solonauts. So here, it's no noise, no hype every week. Sometimes it's just me, and sometimes it's the brightest minds in tech, breaking down what it really takes to grow smarter with AI and automation. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Solomon Williams. I have a special guest with us today. We have Ilya Ozerets. He's the founder of Belchoice and Instaloper. So, Ilya, thank you so much for coming in on the show. We're excited to have you. So just to kind of bring our audience up to speed, just let us know, where you're from and tell us a little bit about yourself on the journey of you being the founder.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Solomon. My name is Ilya Ozerets. I'm a founder of Instaloper and Belchoice. I started those companies helping entrepreneurs and businesses with different needs of building software and or releasing the products, and also looking forward into how technology could help them in their journeys. So that's very briefly of what Belchoice and Instaloper does. About myself, I started in computer science for quite some time. I've been in the industry for more than 15 years, been building startups, helping organizations to build technologies and products. And most recently, one of the great examples was with ID R&D, where we bootstrapped the startup from the ground up, raised a couple rounds, and then managed through the exit, through the acquisition of MyTech Systems. At the same time, I was always looking forward to how to give back to the community and satisfy the referral incoming flow. Pretty much people were referred to me as, hey, if you need help with software applications and or raise capital, assess the business model, they came to me. So that's what I've been doing in the last 10 years here in California.
This is great. So when scaling, and so what did you always kind of see yourself as when you kind of thought of becoming the founder? Was there a shift in mindset, in finding the clients and kind of going through on your workflow and producing for them? Was that a shift for you? Did it come easily? I always find that so fascinating.
I think the clients coming to you is something that to look for. It typically happens when there's demand with something new, trendy, or people don't understand. So that was happening through the referral networks. In terms of looking for the customers and how it's changed, I think now with agentic AI, it's definitely changes drastically. A lot of people deploy tools, and unfortunately, that creates bias on the buyer's side, right? The prospects, they're looking into those different cold outreach systems that have less engagement rates, but at the same time, it becomes more personalized, right? Because of those tools. So Belchoice right now is working on that, kind of establishing the presence and helping other organizations to run their go-to-market funnels effectively, starting with their digital experience. Because the way how the search works, as you very well know, it's changed, right? Previously, we were talking about SEO on different digital platforms and channels. Now it's more about AEO, which is answer engine optimization, right? So it's less about key semantics, but more about the thought leadership and knowledge share. So we do see the change there for sure.
So that's interesting. So for the audience who don't know too much, can you educate us on what is the focus that business owners or someone should work on in terms of their web page on that?
Well, previously you would need to optimize the content pretty much for the keywords, right? And the technical configuration of SEO. Now, what you would need to do is to look for how content that you're creating, or you need to adjust the existing content to the expertise knowledge, meaning, hey, here's the question, here's an answer, and there is actually proof to that. That way, the way how you structure it will be different because you're not tied to the keywords anymore. And the reason being is when the users are asking those LLMs or large language models to find an answer to something, they're searching through the content and looking for the answer to the question that they ask, right? In the different variations. So the content should speak as to answering those questions. And by the way, we do have the guide published on our website in the resource section. So if anybody needs any further deep dive into their specific industry, don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy to run down through that with them as well.
Yeah, I'll make sure to have that inside so people can make it easier for them to look onto that guide. So that's because I am noticing that just even with Google or anything else, when you type in, it usually comes up, Gemini provides like an answer to that approach. And so I'm assuming if that's what you were referring to, like where it's through instead of just focused on the keywords that you said for SEO.
Yes, correct. So when you look at those answers, they're linked, like it provides you, hey, here's what you asked, or here's what user asked, right? Or what it seems as a user asked. Here's what I found, and the references to those knowledge expertise base, and that generates the response based on that, right? So yeah, that's the way how LLMs do work right now.
So, as you guys, you're kind of seeing the trends of it, because of now it's kind of moving more towards, having those answers bringing up, is that something, for clients as you come through, do you see that as it evolving forward? Like, what are your thoughts on like the trends of it as we're moving forward, as more LLMs get more, output focused and, more personalized? What kind of keeps you up to try to keep Belchoice like, keeping ahead of and being ahead of what's to come?
Well, it is very personalized to the industry. For instance, if you think about the expertise, when you want to find something, you're going to look for the expert in that particular niche, right? So the way how we look at this is Belchoice is focused on the Webflow development. Webflow is just one of the systems that allows enterprise and organization entrepreneurs launch their websites without reliance on technical resources, which is the typical blocker or roadblock for marketing and growth teams, as well as go-to-market teams. So what we look for is, okay, well, where do those people will typically look for expertise? Probably somewhere around that, platform or knowledge around that platform. So we definitely need to participate in that. How do you participate in that? You create a content that resonates with that particular subject or platform. That way, you're actually just showing and sharing your experience working on that particular platform, answering the question of the users, be that in the forums or, a FAQ community or something like that. So there's an interesting statistics came out recently is like, where does the LLM get their facts from? I think Reddit was like 40% of it. So if you'll think about it, those expert, like where do people share knowledge and trust that it's genuine, their experience, instead of generative AI being created the content, right? That's what we will look for. So yeah, participating in the partnership community, sharing with the audience, those type of things help.
So with that, because I've seen kind of going through, I know that, I've seen a lot with clients really praise you for acting like real partners on that. And so how is that part of your way on you fostering that mindset on an operation team across your team, your internal team with the client relationships is kind of showing more on and, being this masterclass, so to speak? Or is there other ways?
We do that internally. And also when you start thinking about acquiring customers and implementing that into your funnel, if you go to market funnel, right, where the impression starts and then all the way through the conversion, some of those steps already optimized or automated completely by different tools. Right, you probably use similar things, right, in your cold outreach. So that's definitely something to foster and make it by default. There's, as industry changes, you either need to change or die, so to speak. So we definitely adopting and help our customers adopt as well.
That's a good question. Like on that side, with you seeing, because if you having to adapt, like what are the major shifts that you are seeing, like especially like with that healthcare, that fintech that you kind of work on, like, what are you seeing in that in terms of like the software as a service that you're providing?
Well, in healthcare by itself, there is a outdated experience all around, right? There's so many parties involved. They're very highly regulated, which should, for all of those who work or plan to work in the healthcare industry or vertical, it is, the compliance and regulation should be by default. Then that's no surprise. And a lot of those AI tools, they help not only with the processes, but also enable that compliance to ensure that customers and yourself are actually can sleep well at night, knowing that it's protected with additional layers for those aspects. And I think that's changes drastically, because previously you'd have to have your risk and compliance team extended in the headcount, because they had to do so many or check and implement controls manually. Lately, it's definitely changing, right? There's appetite to how do we satisfy the compliance requirements and at the same time make it workable. Because if it creates more roadblocks than enablers, then you're kind of losing the traction. The customer experience or user experience becomes not friendly, to put it politely. And at the same time, when you think about the automation, what is possible, those different models could help optimize processes all around, from intake forms to optimization on understanding the context, selecting the department, deploying certain AI agents in the workflow that help the people, not to change them, because that's far away in my mind, but to optimize the process where tools become your, pretty much kind of a robot employees, if you will. So you define very clearly the flow and or the full process. You got those AI agents helping you out. There's information coming in. You take that information, send it to another software that analyzes this information and, do certain things with it. Either send it to another API and then creates the outcome, or just working through the workflow. There are multiple steps where AI agents in healthcare in particular could help organizations to thrive and kind of adopt those tools. Administrative overload, that's, obviously another one where you just, like clinicians and medical practices, they're spending a lot of hours on the work that must be, not must be, but could be optimized. And AI agents could help there. Referral and care coordination, that use case comes to mind again. In the referral flow, one of our customers, actually, Staff FMD, solves the problem for the referrals. Like, if you ever been as a patient coming to a primary doctor and he sends you somewhere to do, X procedure or whatever, the problem there arises like, there is no direct communication between where you've been sent to and from, and they don't have a means which, to communicate with each other, to send each other PHI, patient healthcare information securely. And every single step, when you come to one or another party in that flow, they would repeat the same manual process, majority of them, because they haven't yet deployed those tool sets that are available for them. So we do see that changes drastically. There are many more other use cases where, AI agents could help in healthcare. So for sure, and help.
I think that's where, and we've spoken on this before, just on where the AI agents come into play, and then not, really fully relying on, there has to be some level of, there needs to be, and that's what I firmly believe on, is still that human interaction, that's still oversight. It hasn't, as you said, gotten to this level to where it's fully capable. So is that something that you sometimes have to suggest to your clients on that? Or I guess the better question is on, do you see that regularly where people pull more, faith, I guess you could say, into the LLMs? Or are you still hesitating in saying, we should do more of an oversight approach of this helps, but it still hasn't got to that stage? Does that make sense?
I see it depends on the use case. Fully automated with our oversight, that's a very few use cases in my mind that is actually viable. If you think about like PHI and compliance monitoring agents that could be deployed, those are automated because their task is notify you about certain things, right? That's an AI agent that 24/7 works for you, looking and, scanning messaging, scanning code, scanning some things where you would want to find or you would want to be notified. That's their job pretty much for you. And because of that, you will be overseeing the outcome of that particular AI agent. However, if we'll think about certain process that has much less of an error in the flow, then that could be completely automated, right? You would very rarely check or supervise, so to speak, the outcome of that particular AI agent. Think about the smart intake validator. Like if you do have different intake forms and you need to form in the flow, like collect the data, think through the data, then come back to the user with additional questions and then use that data to complete and build your intake flow, then you could pretty much rely on the agent to do that job because there's much less errors that could occur during that flow. So the oversight for that agent will be much less needed. You're thinking about more complex flow where you do have kind of a team of AI agents and they interact with one another. That's where the agentic AI is moving towards, where now we'll becoming a manager of AI agents. You have a swarm of those agents and you just make sure that they work as designed and outcome makes sense.
Right.
And adjust accordingly based on the situation.
So with that, like on that side, with, as the AI agents grow forward, I think, in terms of now that we've seen really a rise in like the no code, the low code tools, you utilize innate workflows for that. Do you feel like with this being more accessible, where have you seen just with the clients that you work with, how does it influence them on that custom software, getting those webhooks enabled through the API? What would you say?
Well, in software development and product development, there's so webhooks and API integrations. That's definitely something needs to be validated in one way or another. AI agent could help do like even write the integration, but that definitely would require certain quality assurance control. Let's put it that way. Be that another agent or, at the end that needs to be validated through go, no go and sort. However, all of the preparation to do that for that review, that could happen in an agentic way. Nowadays, tools allow to optimize and automate a lot of stuff. So that is possible. However, there's an interesting theme. Like a lot of teams operate in an agile manner where you are kind of iteratively design, develop stuff, be that an application, API, whatever it is. And in order to make different AI agents efficient and effective, you actually need to kind of mix with the previous concept of documenting very well, right? In order for AI agent to work well, it has to have very distinct and detailed instructions and the scope and the knowledge around it. So unless you do that, your effectiveness of an agent becomes less powerful, which is kind of contradicting. Not contradicting. It's in a little bit different direction from agile principles where you do and develop first and then iterate and improve. But it's interesting how people start interpreting that. Do you see that working?
Yeah, I think even with mine, like working with we use a lot of, Kanban or Scrum, processes. And, it's so funny because when you kind of go through the workflow, you kind of get your user stories done, getting the run books or for audience that don't know, like the step-by-steps and getting through on the build out. It's the last thing because you want to finish up your user story, your task. Let's move on to the next one that's on the backlog. And as you said, I think that sometimes there's the disconnect between that of having proper, documentation within your Confluence or within your repo to have that. And as you just mentioned, it's something even all across, even in the cloud space. It's just throughout in our industry. So, it's just funny to kind of see that, as you said, and you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And so with Bell right now, like, what do you see that's really working well with you? You seeing it on first off what's working well with it? And then on your day-to-day, just as the founder, what do you see? Like, what are you kind of keeping in mind for like the next goals that you're looking to see for the company?
Well, what's working is deploying iteratively, and understand where it makes sense. Because a lot of people that we talk to, they do hear trends and buzzwords. They may not necessarily understand if they need it or not in the first place. That was always a challenge. I think, educating the audience and potential prospects or partners on whether the new trend, new technology, is it needed, right? Sometimes, like when we talk to the enterprises, their perception is different because, hey, these guys in our industry already started. It doesn't really matter. Do we need it or not? We must do that. Like, it's completely different approaches. Without just an assessment of will it have, like, why this particular use case or why this particular business unit needs to deploy that, that's definitely a challenge for the enterprises that, like, oh, we need to be on par with the competitors, so we do the same thing. Like, well, fine, let's do that. First, let's define where you see potential value. And that's kind of was always my approach from like product-led perspective and product-led growth perspective is think through the customers, through the problems. That's where you start. So I do see that sometimes challenging to explain that you don't need that. It's, there's great tools that are not necessarily considered AI. You could use main platform or you can use Zapier to that extent to actually just automate certain processes. And it is an automation, but it has so much less to do with AI, right? Sometimes when there is a pure logic, it doesn't require additional software and tool sets for working through that. So sometimes it is a challenge to explain to the people who just follow the buzz trends, but they need to feel they're kind of in the flow and they're up to speed. We do see that challenging. But in terms of our approach is we eat the dog food, so to speak, right? Meaning we first test, deploy, and work through certain tool sets that we recommend. Similarly, we definitely optimized our design process, development process, improved our quality assurance processes with different tools. It's not always AI agents, but majority, you definitely want to use them for sure. In content creation optimization, in validation of the different user flows, intakes, all of those that are already proven to be more effective than just human interaction alone, then definitely we'll look to deploy those in those use cases.
Right. And you mentioned a really good word where I hear a lot is it's AI and so forth has always become very buzzwordy. Like it's very hype, especially what you see on all the other social medias on LinkedIn. I see it even with the avatar generator. You see it on Instagram, and it kind of overwhelms you thinking that this is, how can I implement it as my business? And even with our customers, it's, really educating and saying, well, what are low-hanging fruits, so to speak? What are ways that, as you said, simplifying the process, there's no need to over-architect. We don't need to add in more cases to it. So, yeah, I think it's a really big thing that I see a lot of times as well.
Yeah. Another bias that's been created by that is, hey, they're like, and the service providers, professional service providers, they typically now challenged with this concept of, oh, hey, you can now just write the right prompt and all of a sudden your services are no longer needed.
See it all the time.
Why do you come then? Right? If that's the case. But at the same time, the scope, we need like a few people here in the team in order to deliver a high quality product to satisfy your requirements. Where they think is like there are a lot of, short videos around. You can just type the prompt to Cursor, or you can type the prompt to Lovable or other tool that all of a sudden creates the website for you and it's magically working. Well, it is true for those people who know how to use the tools. And on top of that, what else requires in order for that to work for you instead of just having the some sort of a prototype? So that creates a misconception. And what I've heard a lot from those different, especially business people. They obviously see that and they take it as granted. And when they come with that bias towards discussing different real projects or products or needs, that creates additional friction in the conversation, because first you need to explain how it actually works, what it does. And yes, it does bring certain democratization, if you will, into the certain steps within the whole, be that a website development, product development, API development. But at the end of the day, without expertise in the domain, you don't necessarily have ability to use the tool.
Right.
Unfortunately, you have to have some literacy on the domain and the subject. Otherwise, this tool becomes useless for you. Like, there's a plane, you can't fly it without being a pilot. Even though it's an intelligent plane, you just can't do nothing with it, right? Similarly with a lot of other stuff. So that's another interesting aspect that we see with all of this. AI tools helping automate a lot of processes.
Right. It was kind of fun, kind of a side note on it to kind of go off of what you say, because I want to learn more on Belchoice on the victories you guys had, and then what you're looking for in the future. But there's example, because sometimes we at Solonix we do I teach for cloud engineering and so forth, so to help people transition or to teach internal themes. So to your point on, I don't know if you've heard the tool called Cluely, where it can be utilized for kind of like Copilot or anything else, where it'll give you prompts and help you along, with the meeting or with, for sales and so forth else. And how it's marketed is on you. It's an all-knowing, you'll know exactly what you go forward. But, and I bring this up because one of the other engineers that we were teaching forward in Terraform, he was going through on the meeting. He was still new, so he was expecting the AI to give him all the answers, but it's still like human talk. People can be able to see when you're BSing them. We're just all right, okay. So to your point, it's just there has to be that expertise. Yes, it helps. And it can help, and especially in forgetting little things or acronyms, you're oh yeah, that's it. But you starting from on the beginner, you're trying to get up to the level of a senior. That's where that disconnect, and that's where the marketing, that's where we have to educate, and we have to let them know there still needs to be, you have to go through the steps through, and this utilize this tool like a calculator,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think is that one of the major challenges if you're trying to solve with clients, and just when people come in with new clients, are you focused more on educating that, or is it more on the partnerships or the adoption? What is Belchoice as a whole, your focus that you see a gap, or for yourselves on you getting to that next level? And what are you going about that? What would you say?
Well, there's probably two things. One is those who come to us either struggling with being dependent on old stack or technical resources. So we definitely help with migrating and establishing the platform for them and working with them to pretty much unblock them to move forward. We want to grow, we want to test XYZ, but they stuck with old school, CMSs or internal technical resources. Well, we unblock them the way where they don't need to necessarily be dependent on the technical resources at all, and upgrading their tech stack. And after that, we'll look in the low-hanging fruit where certain processes could be optimized. Can we do this go-to-market intake flow with AI agents? Does it apply to them? Does it work? Do they have that problem?
Yeah.
Definitely see that as a need and demand. So the second part is definitely the education part, because then they look at this, okay, well, we've done this, a quarter of an engagement in relationships. Now, moving forward, we have different retainer packages or maintenance, but some of the customers and majority are actually following up with, hey, can we have the dynamic package where we kind of can iterate on a weekly or biweekly basis and optimize or work on optimization for the flow, meaning creating and testing A/B test, user test, all of those different approaches to how do we improve presence further and improve our metrics. So we definitely see that as a demand for what we're solving for.
Mhm.
But no code development tools that is within the Webflow kind of ecosystem, that is definitely the expertise that we provide to the customers.
Okay, great. And then with that, like as the founder, as you're seeing, like what is your next steps like for these next 6 months by the end of 2025, that beginning of Q1 for 2026? Are you looking, is it more to scale more? Of course, everybody wants more leads, or are you wanting to tap into a different industry? Like what are your goals that you see for Belcourt?
We're working on a few projects right now in the pipeline already. Definitely excited about them, but for sure looking for new partnerships where we can build a long-term relationship. We're not picking on every customer. We learned it the hard way. We'd rather say it's not the area where we excel or the approach that you're looking for. We're not the best fit. So we're very upfront about this. And at the same time, we're looking for more great partnerships where we can deliver the value the most. So scaling it is looking for building up and growing our customer base until the end of the year, I think, is the rest of the organizations for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see like on these projects on the side for that. Are you going to go a little into it to give us a little bit sneak peek, or is it still kind of?
So one of the coming projects will be for emerging fund. We're definitely looking forward to this because there's multiple phases out there for this. Looking forward to enable tech-driven emerging fund. And we're iterating on a healthcare startup further, where we actually deploy and automate the application with Webflow and certain agents within the referral management platform. So that's definitely exciting. Looking forward for the outcomes there and what we'll learn. I think nowadays it's important to stay up to speed, but also being humble and flexible and being very adaptive because it's dynamically changing the tool sets. If you even look at the iterations for those LLM general available releases, they're dynamic. I mean, if you think about it, there's so big jumps in what was the size of the initial model, then the second version, third version, now it's GPT-5, right? Cloudy latest versions, Gemini or Grok. Like, you'll think about those fundamental models, they are moving fast. And when you think about scale, wow.
Right.
You want to be as agile to adapt to those changes for sure.
Yeah, absolutely on that. And then, because I always really think, man, is in terms of my belief is just on these next 5 years, I'm so excited to see like where, we're going and just how much of, solutions that's being brought forward, even for SMBs, for small to medium, not even of course, on the large enterprise scale, but even for these, just the opportunities that has arrived. So I'm excited to have that. But as you said, is those iteratives where we can be able to constantly learn and being able to be applied, and always thinking on what are the outcomes first as a whole, as we go forward.
Percent.
Yeah. And so I always ask this, man. So like in terms of, as we're kind of seeing it at scale, like what would you, if, utilize the AI, like for, ChatGPT with no 5, if it's 8 or 9 on this side, what would you use for automation to help with Belcourt's business? If you could wave a wand, like what would you utilize it for to alleviate, whether it's automatically educate customers or if it's creating the perfect workflow, constantly standardizing, templatizing? What would you say you would utilize for that?
Well, we're already utilizing that for multiple reasons, right? But looking forward, I think the expertise will need to be broader deployed, meaning in every function, if you think as we just talked about like 10 minutes ago, you have to have an expertise to use the tool effectively. In other words, if you don't have a accountant, CFO type of person, and you are not an expert on that, on finance or accounting, in order for using those tools and those functions, you need to still have a person to do that. And those expert fine-tuned systems based on fundamental models, I do believe those will step up, meaning you will have you'll need to have those people or expertise, but you could rely on the responses and having those conversations with expert systems more, right?
Yeah.
They would, in my mind, that's definitely coming up because we already see different startups and different functions that are coming up with their particular tuning, and it works. They focused on a niche use case, they take fundamental model, tune that for a particular problem and or domain, and there's definitely outcome and hunger for that. All across the organization, be that if initially it started with the intake and automating the go-to-market funnel, right? There's technical processes for just software engineering, but legal stuff, there's very, very few companies were able to make that effective to the extent where when you go to the console, any organization going to the law firm, it's very expensive. And majority of them are still not adopting AI toolset to the extent where, hey, previously we will charge you, I don't know, this much for 10 hours, right? And it could be indefinite, as you very well know, on a legal expense. Whereas now, hey, we already worked through that using that tool. Here's what we reviewed it. Can you help us out analyzing using your internal whatever optimization or optimized tool? Can that be narrowed down? Nobody's saying it's replacement, but hopefully those will come out in the nearest future with even more user-friendly without the dependency so much on the expert knowledge.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm really curious to see on that, because even as you said, even as a founder, and having to go through, you don't know what you don't know, and that's where it's hard to, find in on, the right people to help get to the goals and, leaning on and finding that expertise. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be critical on that side. No, man, this has been great. For the people, for the audience, that are really interested in Belchoice, they want to learn more. They want to know more about, the projects that are coming up that you kind of hinted at. Where can they learn more about, the user guide of wanting to follow through on Belchoice if they're interested in, getting a consultation? Where can they find you?
Yeah, it's been a great time. Thank you for having me here. And for the audience to find us, it could be belchoice.com, belchoice.com, and or send an email to info@belchoice.com, or you can reach out to me personally at ilyaozerets.com or find my profile on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And for the audience, I'll make sure to kind of have a couple of those so it can be easily for you to find for Ilya. So thanks, man, for coming on. Hope you have a great Labor Day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, and same to you.
All right. Take care, everyone. See you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the AI Advantage. If this episode sparked an idea, share it with your network. Subscribe for more no-fluff conversations on how smart tech drives real outcomes. And if you're ready to future-proof your business, let's connect at solonox.net.